Hello students, in this session we will discuss properties of language. First, we will look into the definition of language and then its properties. Let's begin with this visual. What do you see? The person who is standing at the left and the one who is standing at the right, they are talking to one another, and the person who is in between them, he is listening. It is evident that they are communicating with one another in some form. Now, the question is how? How are they communicating with one another? The answer is very simple. It is through language that they are communicating with one another. Coming to the definition of language, it is a medium of communication through which we express our thoughts, ideas, feelings, emotions, etc. Communication can be divided into linguistic and non-linguistic. Linguistic communication is that communication when the whole language is available, whereas non-linguistic communication is limited to facial expressions, signs, gestures, movement of hands, etc. The visual that I have shown at the very start will make this clear. The two persons who is standing at the left and the right, they are using linguistic communication, and the one who is standing between them, he is using non-linguistic communication, or he is communicating non-linguistically. So how do we know this? We know this because we are visualizing that the two persons at the left and the right, they are moving their lips. That means they are using language to communicate. And the one who is standing in between them, that person is moving his eyes and lips. That is, he is communicating non-linguistically through facial expression. Next, language is a unique property of the human species. It is different from animal language. Question may come to your mind, what makes human language so unique, or how is it different from the animal language? Human language is unique because it allows us to communicate with each other with infinite variety. We can use numerous ways to communicate with the other human beings. That is the reason why language of human beings are considered as unique. The properties of language. There are 6 properties: displacement, arbitrariness, productivity, discreteness, duality, and cultural transmission. We will discuss each property one by one. First, displacement. Displacement is the ability to talk about past and future, which is that it allows us to talk about anything which has happened in the past or things that may occur in the future. For example, through language, all of us can express how the online classes were held during the first lockdown, and we can also express how we assume the online classes would be in the coming days. In addition to this, Language allows us to refer about abstract things or things which we are not sure if they really exist. Instance, heaven and hell. There are exceptions. When it comes to B communication, we have the property of displacement, or we can say that there may be some property of displacement in bee communication. When a worker bee finds a source of nectar and return to the hive, it can perform a complex dance routine to communicate the other bees the source or the location of the nectar. The second property of language is arbitrariness. Arbitrariness means linguistic signs bear no logical, intrinsic, natural relationship to their meaning. That is, there is no natural connection between a linguistic form and its meaning. When we say or write a word, we get a mental image of that word. For example, tree. There is nothing in the word tree that connects with the concept of tree. The connection that we make between the word and the meaning is because of social convention and not because the word has meaning in its nature. Again, like displacement, this property of language has exceptions called onomatopoeias, where there is a connection between the word and the meaning. Example, when we say meow, we imagine a cat because cats say meow. Other such words are cuckoo, crash, etc. Productivity is another property of language. Most animals have limited number of messages they can send or receive. But human language is not restricted to any limited number of messages. Human beings has the ability to create and invent new words. It means that the potential number of utterances in any human language is infinite. With new situation, human beings can manipulate their linguistic resources to produce new expressions and new sentences. For example, if you hear someone using these two words, guarantee and true, in a sentence, who can guarantee that his story is true? You will be able to apply in another situation. I guarantee you will love this movie. It might be true. The other property of language is discreteness. It means that sounds are different from one another. Pa, ta, da, ba. These sounds are different from one another. Sounds that we use in language are meaningfully distinct. It is that language works on a sound system and one sound can change the meaning of the entire word. For example, pin and bin. In these words, the pa sound and ba sound changed, but this change in one specific sound has changed the meaning of these two words. That is the speciality of this property of language called discreteness. Moving on to the next property of language, that is duality. Language is organized in two levels. First one, it is made up of meaningless elements, or say the distinct sounds pa, da, ka, ba, etc. And the second, it is made up of meaningful elements. When we combine the sounds meaningfully, then we get a meaningful word. For example, if we go to the first level, or if we cite the first level, ba, a and ta, they are separate sounds, and when they stand alone, they do not produce any meaning, or in other words, they are meaningless. But when combined, we get bat, bet, which is a meaningful word. This property of language shows us that at one level, when we produce individual sounds, then it doesn't make any sense. Whereas with the second level, we understand that with a limited number or set of distinct sounds, we are capable of producing number of sound combinations which are different in meaning, as well as which helps us to convey meaning with the help of a meaningful word. The last property, or the sixth property, and one of the important properties of language is cultural transmission. Language is passed from one generation to another. It is not inborn. You acquire language and culture with other speakers, and it is not through parental genes that we learn a language. Human infants growing up in isolation produce no instinctive language. For example, an infant born to parents who are speakers of Hindi language but adopted by parents who speak Assamese, the infant will speak Assamese. However, he may learn Hindi in the future. Human beings, we are not born with the ability to produce utterances in a specific language, such as English or Assamese. However, we can say that we are born with some kind of inborn ability to acquire a language. On the other hand, if we consider animal communication, then they are born with a set of specific signals that are produced instinctively. These are the 6 properties of language. Now, pause the video for some time and recollect what you have understood. If you think that you are done, then you can restart the video. What we have learned in today's class, briefly. The key points. Language is one form of communication. The other forms of communications are gestures, blinking, touch, sneeze, etc. Displacement, arbitrariness, productivity, discreteness, duality, and cultural transmission. These are the 6 major properties of language. Though there are other properties of language, these 6 are the major properties. Displacement is the ability to talk about the past and future. Arbitrariness refers that there is no natural connection between a linguistic form and its meaning. Productivity is the ability to create or invent new words. Discreteness means that the sounds of language are different from one another. Duality means that language has 2 levels, the primary level which consists of units and the secondary level which consists of elements. And cultural transmission is that language is transmitted from one generation to other. It is not through parental genes that we learn a language, but it is when we live in a society we start learning a language. That's all for today. Thank you.